Hi everyone, today we're going to look at bass lines and syncopation. First though, I'd like you to do the do now, so I want you to list 3 things that you already know about hip hop after watching the video from last week. So pause the video now and write down the 3 things. Answers are coming up, make sure you finished. So here's some of the things we talked about last time, that it was developed in the 1970s. It's from the Bronx in New York. That there were 4 main parts to it: DJing, breakdancing, rapping or MCing, and graffiti. And it was an expression of young people who were facing poverty and some really difficult times. If you didn't get very many things for your do now, go back and watch your first video again so that you can remind yourself of that. Today, we're going to be learning about bass lines and synthesizers, transposing and low pitches, looping and quantization, and syncopation, which means offbeat. We've done a bit of that in last week's lesson as well. So, when you think of a bass, we usually think of a low guitar. Bass lines are the melodies played by our bass instruments, and they are low pitched. That's really important to distinguish in the song. They can be played by a bass guitar, and that's usually what people think. But also in rap, they're quite often played by synthesizers. So synthesizer is a machine that generates sounds. In Bandlab, you can change your instrument to a synth bass, which looks like this. Often in rap music as well, in hip hop, a bass sampler is used, and that is the same as a drum machine, but instead of drum sounds, it has pre-recorded bass sounds. Now, basses have low pitches. If you're trying to write a bass line, you can't write one with high pitches. So low pitches can be found on the left-hand side of the piano. And on Bandlab, to make it even lower, sometimes it's useful to press the minus so that it goes down an octave. That's not true for all the bass instruments, but some of them that's quite useful. Transposing is another way that you can make your bass line, your bass melody move up or down. And you select your bass line, and then you can press -12 to go down an octave. Right, let's look for some examples of hip hop bass lines that might inspire us. So the first one is quite an old one that came out right in the early days of hip hop. The Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper's Delight. That bass line's got loads of notes in it, and it's also really recognizable. As soon as you hear it, you know which song you're listening to. Okay, I'm now going to look at some bass lines from more modern, more recent hip hop inspired music. So this is Lady Leisha's Queen's Speech, episode 4, which was released in 2015, and you can really hear this bass line really, really clearly while she's rapping.
And your flow so old, granddad. Bruh, it's just banter. Yeah, I'm way too much like a black cap. I boss. What you start chatting in the club for? Just dance, man. Like yo, fam, alam, yo, fam, yo.
So you can really hear that bass line coming through. And this is Skepta's Shut Down, which was also released in 2015.
I mean, no time. Usain Bolt when I run up on stage, I pick up the mic and it's reload time. Don't know your songs, but they know mine. That's why I got gigs just.
You can hear, if you might have to listen to it a couple of times, but you can hear quite the low sounds. That is the bass line that he's written. Another really prominent bass line is from this American artist. So Lady Leisha and Skepta are both from the UK, but Kendrick Lamar is from the US. And his song Humble from 2017 has got a really obvious bass line. So one of the reasons I want to play you this is because his bass line is looped. And nearly all bass lines are looped. All the examples that I've just played you, the bass lines are looped, which means repeated using technology. And you do it yourself on Bandlab by kind of clicking that recycling sign and dragging it. But you can really hear in Humble just how many times you hear this bass line over and over again. You get the idea, and it kind of goes on almost throughout the whole song. Now, in our bass line, what we're going to do is actually be looking at syncopation again, which we know means offbeat, because last lesson we did our kick drum rhythm and we tried to make that syncopated. Now, I'm going to update my definition. Instead of just saying, oh, it's offbeat, usually when we say, okay, this rhythm is a syncopated rhythm, it doesn't mean that every single note is off the beat. What it usually means is that most of the notes are off the beat, so it has a certain feel to it. And I'm going to show you how to write a syncopated bass. Now, not all of the examples that I played you have syncopated basses. In fact, very few of them in those examples had syncopated bass lines all the way through. But for our piece, I want us to look at syncopation and get really good at it. That's why I'm asking you to write a syncopated bass line. Now, the Skepta song has quite a syncopated bass in the first half of the bass. I'm just going to play it to you.
Time. Usain Bolt when I run up on stage, I pick up the mic.
So just that section, that is quite syncopated, which means that the bass is not playing on the beat. Let me show you what it looks like on Bandlab. So I've zoomed in here so you can see 8, 8.2, 8.3, 8.4. Those are the beats. The 0.2 means beat 2, the 0.3 means beat 3. And so I've put little dotted lines so you can see where the beats start. So that's beat 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Now, in the kick drum, the rule was you could put a note on beat 1. You could put a kick sound on beat 1. In the bass line, you can also put a bass note right at the start of your bass rhythm. I don't think that necessarily makes it sound not syncopated. But you can see that if you look at the starts of all my other notes, that does not begin on a beat, that doesn't begin on a beat, that doesn't begin on a beat, that doesn't begin on a beat. Therefore, my bass line is quite syncopated. Don't copy my bass line exactly. You'll write one that's yourself, that's your own. But this is how you would check to see that your bass line isn't just all on the beat. Okay, the last thing I just want to remind you about is quantizing. This is a really important process, and it will move your notes slightly left and right when you quantize. And this is designed to make them sound more in time. Now, sometimes it doesn't always work, but it's a really, really useful way of helping make the rhythms more accurate, because whenever we play something in, it's very rare that we play it 100% perfect. So this is how Bandlab helps you with that. Right, now what you need to do is finish your quiz and submit it. Thanks, everyone.